We have to build the bridge as we walk across it. And that's just the new reality of how things are being done. The speed that comes with AI matched with the data that comes with the context. And if you put those together, you get like these magical experiences where you can really connect with humans in a way that you can't do without the technology. The brands that win will be the ones that have built the foundation now and not just, kind of the features. I think physical interaction is going to become really important again. And, not everything will be digital, and brands will have to get creative on how to connect with people in real life.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Brand Humanity podcast. And, I'm so excited for today's show in particular. What we've been really exploring with this broader series is kind of a open source learning effort to try to put into place what the next generation of the marketing playbook looks like. We know that AI has brought so much disruption and really kind of challenging all of us to bring a little bit more first principles into how we're approaching our work as marketing leaders and practitioners. We know that the job functions are changing, how we're measured. Ultimately, this is meant to be an exploration of that change and a way for all of us to grow together and figure out kind of what this, how to really set ourselves up as well as our teams and companies up for success kind of in the intelligence age. And so, a lot of our conversations have been around diving deep into specific like sub-functions of marketing, a lot of sort of the human kind of interest stories as well. But we haven't really had a conversation about the enterprise. And I think that's a really interesting place for us to focus and place I have a lot of curiosity around. And so what we're going to talk about today is really kind of a shift in how enterprise AI conversations are moving from this kind of experimental phase that we've kind of seen ourselves kind of at the sort of dawn of ChatGPT and the other kind of frontier labs. Towards how we operationalize AI at scale. And what do companies need to do in order to do it in a way that's safe and intelligent and effective? And of course, from a marketing lens, a big part of that are the digital experiences that we create and we operate. And so I'm thrilled to have an expert on the show with us today. Neha Sampat is the founder and CEO of Contentstack, where she's helping define the next era of digital experiences through the company's vision of the Agentic experience platform, or AXP. And she's a 3-time founder. She's a recognized leader in the enterprise. And she's built this reputation for really challenging kind of conventional thinking and building category defining companies in both the innovation which they're rooted, but also the cultures which she brings them to life. And under her leadership, Contentstack has evolved from a pioneer in headless CMS into a platform that's focused on helping enterprises operationalize AI through adaptive, context-aware digital experiences. And prior to Contentstack, Neha founded Built.io, which was acquired by Software AG in 2018, as well as Raw Engineering. And beyond all that, she's been recognized by Inc. On their female founders list. The MarTech Breakthrough Awards, the Springboard Enterprises, and she's an advocate for diversity, entrepreneurship, and community initiatives in one of my favorite cities and markets in the world, Austin, Texas. So, Neha, welcome to the Brand Humanity Show.
Thank you, Anthony. It's so great to be here. I'm super excited about this conversation. Very timely.
Likewise. Very timely. And I'm so excited to learn from you. This obviously has been a body of work that you've really spent your career kind of building. And I feel like it's one that we haven't really heard in the kind of broader kind of echo chamber yet, because a lot of the disruption that we're hearing is, of course, at the frontier labs or maybe agentic startups that are popping up. But the enterprise is where this becomes mainstream. And I imagine where a lot of the questions still exist today. So I'm really excited to unpack it with you. And over the last few years, it feels like a lot of the AI work within the enterprise has been kind of this experimental type of phase. I'm curious, kind of from your lens, what feels fundamentally different about the conversations now?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've entered a stage of maturity in beyond experimentation to where AI is starting to become very normally used inside most enterprises. I would say from a recent survey we did, 90% plus of enterprises are now using AI or have agentic strategy as a top priority in their company. Where I would recall maybe 2.5 years ago, I'm sitting with my customer advisory board for Contentstack, and I asked people about their AI strategies, and most of them were still saying we're not allowed to touch the stuff.
Oh,
And since then, there's sort of been this reckoning, it's become kind of chaotic, and that's led to some fear, some anxiety. Essentially, now executives have also gotten smarter and are asking better questions, like where's the real value, where's the impact? If I'm investing in these tools, what's the ROI? And more importantly, it's led to some challenges around compliance, and are we on brand, and is this safe and secure, and are we putting out things that are following the guardrails that we should be setting? And so that's essentially what's happened because of this speed. And speed isn't bad, but speed without some sort of infrastructure just makes it easy to scale a lot of mistakes. And so now, I would say that the real shift from 18 months ago to 2026 is that now the companies are being forced to talk about, like, what does the foundation actually look like underneath all of that work and all of that chaos. And that's where we're headed today, is enterprises actually digging deeper and having initiatives around putting some infrastructure in place for the utilization of AI.
yeah. And it's interesting to hear that the kind of initial reaction was more rooted in anxiety. In a way, it seems like that, and sort of excitement that, so many others are bringing. Why do you think that is? That like enterprise leaders kind of feel both kind of, I guess, anxiety maybe is the first reflex, but now perhaps a bit more excitement in this operational phase that we're stepping into.
It still exists inside a lot of large enterprises. We haven't crossed the chasm necessarily across the board, but there's a very fast unlock that happens. So once an organization starts to see that unlock occur, it then becomes widespread and adopted really quickly inside an organization. And what we've seen happen is organizations that kind of hold back because of the anxiety, or just because they haven't figured out what their rules and regulations are. Some have kind of a guardrails first approach, where others are, let's dive in and then decide on guardrails later. Those that decided on guardrails later are definitely further along, but now they're like backpedaling on, okay, well, do we need to build the foundation first? Versus those that kind of took their time and took the sort of a crawl approach to experimenting are now starting to build the foundation and then work their way into like slowly releasing AI across their organization. But the core reason, the reason for the anxiety is a combination of just being nervous about how fast things are moving and whether or not organizations can keep up, if they can service their customers and maintain security standards in the way that they need to. But there's also a fear of like, what does this mean for my job? And what does it mean for my colleagues? And what does it mean for the business? And so that still remains to be seen for a lot of companies.
That's great. And, we the thesis that we have on this show is really around, that was in the title of the show, this idea that brand in particular is going to have this sort of renaissance moment in this era where, AI is sort of automating or certainly bringing a lot of scale to more of the transactional side of marketing or creating these kind of digital experiences, and sort of creating a moment where brands that can connect authentically with their audience emotionally, build kind of trusted relationships. Like, these are the things that will be valued. And I'm curious kind of what you think of that, and how do you think about brand as a competitive advantage, especially now in a world where, to your point, AI is, we're all kind of asking better questions. It's getting better adopted. The enterprise is being more thoughtful. What's the role of brand in all of this?
Yeah, I actually think so. AI is going to make us even more obsessive about the brands we care about. And there's two parts to this. There's the role that AI plays, and there's the role that AI will never play. The role that AI can play, if you think about governance around brand, you can teach AI to be on brand, to use the right colors, to set the tone and use the right voice. and generate content or graphics or images that are on brand and relevant. And that's cool because that's essentially like the visual identity of a brand. But beyond that, when you think about generating content that's generic and you get into the conversation about the sea of sameness and differentiating a brand, that's, AI can create content and replicate things, but it can't genuinely care. AI will never genuinely care. And so while you can match tone and format and cadence, what it can't do is actually understand and empathize with what your customer is going through and give a damn about them. Like that's the benefit of having humans on the other side of a brand. The brands that lead with care and that actually empathize with their fans, their audiences, their users, their customers, and even the people inside their walls, their employees, those are the ones that will continue to have that special touch and be human and connect with their audiences. And that's really powerful. That's something that only brands will be able to do.
What is it? I'm curious where, I've heard a lot of sort of, an AI driven initiatives within the enterprise, and a lot of those sort of starting maybe in a pilot phase, or maybe they're sort of isolated kind of use cases. Do you have a sense of why a lot of these net new initiatives either stall or get kind of stuck in that kind of initial kind of pilot mode and don't ever sort of move beyond it?
I think that there's just been almost this like hangover of like, let's do everything. Let's try it all. Let's move. We're behind. Let's move really fast. And it's gotten to the point where it's almost become overwhelming for a lot of organizations. And those organizations are now trying to put up some rules and suggesting that let's not try to boil the ocean. Let's not try to do it all. Let's set some boundaries around what we're going to do. And so I think that's what's driven a lot of like, let's take a step back and decide what initiatives actually should be AI driven. Let's figure out how to eliminate some of the hallucination that occurs without having proper context, without having the proper foundation. And then let's build on top of that. And so that becomes really important because you've talked a lot about the sea of sameness across marketing in general. And if you have if you have a generic background to how you're adapting AI, and especially for Gen AI, you don't end up with anything that's unique to the brand or unique to the experience or unique to the customer base. And so that realization of we need to set the foundation, we need to set the guardrails, we need to train the AI on our brand and on our culture, which is really important, has become a realization that most organizations now have. Let's build that foundation. And then once that foundation is built, let's build on top of that and start to generate the content that's actually brand aware and culture aware. I think that's super important.
Super, super important. That's that most of these companies of this scale don't have a kind of AI technology problem. It's really a operational readiness. How are we ready to deploy the technology? And I do want to apply it to marketing, but you said the word context, and I think that's kind of a really important place to double click. It's becoming, I think it's also some of your research, one of the most valuable assets that enterprises own is their context. Yeah, tell me a little bit more about kind of what you mean by that.
Yeah. So, I mean, as a company, Contentstack is content and data, right? And to us, putting those together it gives you context. And that's really important because context is essentially the difference between an agent that actually helps your business and does things that make impact and create value versus hallucinating and providing generic feedback, right? And so every enterprise has knowledge, has a culture, has decades of data, customers, a voice, sometimes rules and guardrails, the things that they care about. That's, it's what makes up a company and an enterprise. If your AI doesn't have access to that and hasn't learned how to interact with that, it just defaults to something that's very generic. And so generic goes back to that idea of the sea of sameness. Everybody sounds the same, everybody looks the same. And if you don't come across as unique, for us, that means you show that you actually care, you understand the customer, you empathize with what they're going through. And an important part of that is that you're also bringing your own employees along for that part of the journey, because everybody's having that sense of like, okay, I'm super overwhelmed. What does this mean for my work? What does it mean for my job? And how do I continue to be a valuable contributor in this new world, right? And so all of that is essentially powered by context, and context is powered by the combination of pulling together content and data that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, let's apply this to that kind of digital experience use case. You guys have framed the language around this as adaptive digital experiences, which feels, I'd love to get into sort of the definition of that and how it's sort of different than the traditional maybe personalization approach, or kind of where we've kind of come from as an industry. And I think without trying to solve the puzzle, but context, data, governance, these things are very important kind of ingredients into that, at least in terms of how I'm kind of understanding it. But Q shares a little bit about your vision for adaptive digital experiences and how it fits into this kind of moment.
Yeah, for sure. So you mentioned personalization. I think that's an important part of the conversation. So personalization before AI was essentially identifying segments of people and trying to create content that was generic to that segment, right? So like a demographic, for example, 40-year-old females from Austin, Texas might be interested in the Boots event that includes some really great wine or something, whatever. That's assuming that everybody in that age range and that demographic and that locale is interested in the same thing. The difference with AI is the speed at which you can actually dissect information and context and data to get to something that's more one-to-one. So that segment of people might have 100 different people in it. Each of those have a different interest. And so the one-to-one personalization or that one-to-one experience is created quickly. And then the adaptive portion of that is those people are also going through change in their lives. And so they may come to a website, a digital experience, a store, and expect some sort of an experience one day, but 3 days later might want something different. And that ability to adapt and understand the context and understand the timing and understand the mood and understand the person, the behavior, all of that happens as a result of being able to have the speed that comes with AI matched with the data that comes with the context. And if you put those together, you get like these magical experiences where you can really connect with humans in a way that you can't do without the technology.
Yeah, so powerful. And I think you mentioned this earlier, but I pulled up a quote. You said it's without content, agents are chatbots, and agents without context, agents hallucinate. And so I think that's such an easy to kind of wrap your head around kind of metaphor, illustration, as it were, of kind of how these things all fit together.
Yeah, and I think just to add on to the adaptive, like every single human that is trying to adopt AI and every single enterprise or company that's also going through the journey of changing as a result of AI is on a journey, essentially. And to use an analogy, if you've used a GPS to get from point A to point B, sometimes it leads you the wrong way and you take like a left turn, but then it self-corrects and it puts you back on the path. And that's kind of what's happening right now because things are moving so fast and things are changing so fast. That idea of being able to adapt your experience or your journey to the way things are headed is really important. So that's an important part of having a digital experience that's adaptive.
Totally. And you mentioned this sort of like pace of change being, faster than we've ever seen it before. And, earlier we used words like anxiety. Like a lot of this causes people to feel pretty overwhelmed just in terms of maybe the human side of all of this. When you think about just the pace of change that users, admins, marketers kind of in the enterprise have to adhere to or sort of match, what are you hearing from those digital teams or those executives who are, again, keeping our job is to effectively keep up with this pace of change and innovation that we're seeing with the technology?
So what we've seen, and I mentioned we did a survey recently that it surveyed about 700 people that are all AI leaders or driving AI initiatives inside large enterprises. They said what they found is that 88% actually wish that they had slowed down and built a foundation before moving in as fast as they have and dealt with all of this change really fast. So a lot of leaders are actually taking the stance of let's slow things down. Let's figure out what the foundation looks like. Let's figure out what tools we need. And then let's figure out how to get back on track. That being said, speed is still of the essence, and everyone is feeling like they're a little bit behind, and that leads into and feeds into the anxiety that continues to exist. And so I guess the advice that I give to my customers and enterprises is let's figure out the right approach to take a crawl, walk, run approach to all the different AI initiatives. Some of them are going to go straight to run, but many of them can start with crawl, and you can take the time to train not just the AI, but also training your teams and training your customers and your audiences on how to adapt to all the changes that are happening and how organizations and brands are interacting with their end users.
Yeah. I know I heard the term from, I forget who mentioned it, but this language around like intentional friction. How do we kind of at the right places in the project plan or wherever, how do we introduce intentional friction? Not saying we don't want to move fast, but if anything, to move forward in the right, scalable, correct way, limit technical debt, and so on. And I think when we're talking about things like data and context, at least for those parts of the project plan, having some, a chance to take a beat and make sure that we have everything in the right place, or risk kind of the downstream kind of negative outcome that could come without it. So I'm a fan of intentional friction wherever we can.
Yes.
It does feel like speed is just it's like if there's a word cloud for the last 3 years, speed would be one of the larger fonts kind of in that cloud that we're seeing. With this chaos, I mean, that sometimes comes alongside with speed. Have you seen folks within kind of the Tiger team kind of responsible for doing the AI rollout or initiative, sort of avoid, avoid the chaos or avoid some unnecessary kind of, mistakes or issues, while still being able to maintain that speed or be very competitive, aggressive, and maybe even aggressive on how they kind of bring these technologies to market?
I think the people that are most successful are those that are able to stay a little bit calm in the chaos and be okay with living in a little bit of the gray area, because things do change really fast, and that leads to that feeling of being overwhelmed. But if you live in the gray, you kind of end up having a little bit more control than you believe that you have. So it's sort of this idea of like you can't wait for the certainty, because nobody really knows how fast things are moving or how things are going to change or where things are going to go. And we're just like, there's a lot of noise being thrown at us. Some of that is being generated by AI, so it is the sameness and the generic messaging, right? And we're consuming that, and we've gotten used to consuming a lot of information really fast. But we are genuinely in a little bit of a gray moment, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. And so accepting that, getting comfortable with that discomfort is really powerful. Yeah. And the people that are able to do that are struggling less, because they're sort of just navigating the day to day, and they're allowing the GPS to kind of shift as they make changes occur, right? And so I would say, like, the advice that I give is like, don't like overly stress out to like get ahead of everybody. Just like figure out what you need to do to take care of your team and your customers, and then move at the pace at which makes the most sense, and then act with empathy with everybody that you're around, because everybody's going through it. It's not, you're not alone, and it is a gray area, and this is different for everyone, and we are moving really fast, and that all has to be okay.
Totally. And I think I'm curious to get your kind of application of that for the marketing executive or the marketing team, or even digital kind of leadership, and how do you see sort of the job function kind of evolve now as we're sort of getting deeper into the agentic era?
Yeah, so I think what's happening is those people in job functions that are learning how to use AI to do the jobs to be done, essentially, are moving their tasks, their day-to-day tasks, to agents to be able to do a lot of the day-to-day mundane, repeatable tasks. And it's freeing up those people to do some of the deeper think that hasn't had really the opportunity to surface because they've been so busy with the day-to-day. So it's like when you used to look for, I want to bring someone on board that can roll up their sleeves and do the work. It's actually like, I want to bring in someone who can teach their agents to roll up their sleeves and do the work so that they can then free up their time to do some of the deeper thinking or the actual connection with humans. And when you come down to, like, again, that idea of the sea of sameness, it's how do you stand out? It's having that human connection. It's showing that you care. One of our bases at Contentstack is the idea of care without compromise. It means that we actually understand what our customers are going through. We empathize with them. We change with them. We help them navigate that change. And it's not just about selling software. It's about sitting in their seat, understanding the pain that they're in, understanding how they're all trying to differentiate as well and get through that sea of sameness. And the way to do that is to use your human to human connection. So having the ability to train your agents to do the tasks that need to be done is how people will kind of rise above kind of the old way of working and make themselves a bit more superhuman than they were able to in the past.
I love it so much because sometimes in the rush of B2B marketing, enterprise software, like it's there's a temptation to miss sort of a lot of the meaning that we're creating, so to speak, and because it's so transactional and business and money and all these sorts of things. But when we think about it, our customers are going through the same disruption that we are, and they're trying to create beautiful experiences, connect on an emotional level with their audience, build relationship at scale. And in a world that our profession as marketers, we can automate out some of the repetitive work and free ourselves up to focus on creating that value for customers. And like, there's rich meaning in that effort. And Absolutely. It feels like we have the opportunity now in a way that maybe we hadn't had even in the past, because we were working on the weekly update or
campaign brief.
Yeah, exactly. Campaign brief, right? And now it's like, great, here's a brief template. Like, let me talk into my phone for 90 seconds and colorize that prompt, and here we are. We have at least something far enough along that with a little tweaking is ready to ship. So it feels like, in a way, there's a very optimistic future here, a very sort of human-centric future, leveraging this technology to kind of liberate us to focus more on it.
Yeah, absolutely. But it does require everyone who wants to move into that world to do things differently. And that's the part that we're still struggling with, right? Like there's people that have done things a certain way for so long that it is a human untraining and retraining. And people are better at that than others. And those that have leaned in and have decided to kind of jump a step forward and do that experimentation, and they've just like moved faster and excelled their own skill set, right? And so that's what we have to continue to do, is bring people along for that part of the journey.
Yeah, I think there's like there's 5 stages of like being on this journey. Like, where earlier on it was like super scary and existential, and wait a minute, like, does my experience even matter anymore as an executive in marketing, or is that just one prompt away? And there's all of this. And by the way, I'm not saying that does or doesn't, that is or isn't true. But there's all these like big questions we ask, and it's like overwhelming. But then on the other side of that, when you're getting your hands on the tools and you're starting to kind of lean in, and you're like, wow, this is actually a opportunity to reinvent this practice. Not alone in a silo, but with all of us. We're like, the bar is lowered. We're all on the same kind of starting line and figuring out kind of how we go forward. That's really exciting. And so I think some folks, maybe to your point, jumped to that end pretty quickly. A lot of people are on different maybe places on that plane.
I've been calling that an unlock, and it's it's just kind of it's a generic term, but like there is a moment in time at which someone goes, oh well, that means I can do this, and that like thing clicking in your head has to happen at the individual level before it can really become as powerful as it is.
Totally. Well, let's look forward a little bit here. And time scales are always weird. Who knows how long these things take or how short they take in our world. But if we said the next 3 to 5 years or so, what do you think changes most dramatically about how brands create and deliver their digital experiences? Like, what is this future that we're kind of building towards?
Yeah, I mean, this is where we can get sci-fi-ish, or we could just think about the realities in front of us. But I mean, the short answer is that the brands that win will be the ones that have built the foundation now, and not just kind of the features of it. So the biggest shifts is the brands that are creating experiences won't be exclusively humans sitting in front of tools anymore. It's going to be that agents are going to be creating content as well. Agents will be talking to other agents and optimizing and personalizing and automating. And it's not hype. It's already essentially starting to happen today. The question is whether those agents can operate with like the right business context, governed context, brand awareness, and of course, security is going to become really important and critical to all of this. And that all has to be there. Otherwise, agents will create more chaos and create more of the sea of sameness that exists. So if anyone can generate infinite content, it is definitely, AI agents, that kind of thing. But we don't want the commoditized content to stand out. What we want to stand out is that which is personalized, dynamic, adaptive, one-to-one. And that's where the brands will have to evolve to create experiences that do that, not just on their websites or mobile apps, but also through the agents that people are polling, through learning language models, through whatever context we use, whether it's Claude or ChatGPT or whatever other models we're all using to consume information. Brands are going to have to interact with those and feed the right content to the right engines so that the right information can be found. And that's essentially how our interaction with brands is going to have to change over time. And then the second piece to all of this is, I think physical interaction is going to become really important again. And not everything will be digital. There will be more tactile experiences that rise up, and brands will have to get creative on how to connect with people in real life. And I think that's really exciting, actually.
Oh, it's so exciting. Not embarrassed to admit, but I spent years in the pandemic working on kind of the virtual event type of experience. And I think in a moment of time, that was great. I think one of the big kind of takeaways from all of that was just the hunger we have to be in person and the magic that happens. And so I too am excited to see, in addition to adaptive brand building at scale, how can we sort of help apply a lot of that same kind of framework to in-person experiences too.
Totally. And brands they still have a lot of loyalty and following, and those brands that are operating in a new way, that is a competitive advantage in and of itself to be able right? And to be able to connect with your end users in a way that's new and unique and different, and to break through that sea of sameness. So using AI to protect how it all happens is important, but then brands will get human really fast again, which is kind of cool.
Super cool. This is the fulfillment of, I think, what brand-driven marketers have been sort of hoping for, like over the years. We just got kind of pulled into a little bit more of the transactional side of the practice and pulled out of necessity, perhaps, but pulled away from more of the relational side. And this feels like the pendulum is shifting back to the creative, to the to the big picture thinkers. And so it's a really kind of incredible time to scale our ability to build brands that matter, feel human, and make a real impact in the world. So looking forward to it. Neha, this is so awesome. Can I ask, what's the best way for folks who are really interested in this? They might be, again, working within the context of an enterprise that's in the middle of a transformation. They might be at the helm of the digital experience and are really wanting to understand how can they get their context, their governance kind of in a good place. What's the best way for them to get engaged and learn more about the work that you and the team are doing?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can obviously come to contentstack.com and engage with us there if you want to learn more about the product and our platform. We also have another webinar coming up next month, which Anthony, you're going to be a part of. And we're releasing the study that I referenced a couple times called the Agentic Enterprise Report at that webinar, with a lot of really cool findings from these 700 companies we talked to. And so I would say show up to that. You can register for it and then learn more and continue the conversation, because there's a lot we're learning on a really expedited basis daily. So I think we'll have a lot of cool stuff to share there.
It's true. And I'm honored to be a very small part of that. And I got a chance to see a little preview of the research, and it's extremely compelling. And so if any of this conversation kind of sparked interest, if there's kind of real kind of rich data, that anyone listening wants to kind of bring into conversations internally, you definitely don't want to miss the webinar. So we'll put the link in the show notes, and we'll promote it out. Folks, if you're listening to this on the newsletter, even we'll include the link here, but would really encourage folks to check that out. But what an exciting time. Neha, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with this group. And we look forward to kind of stepping into this agentic future as brand builders and experience creators together.
Awesome. Yeah, Anthony, thank you so much for having me, and looking forward to the next one.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody.